Hello and welcome to Leveraging SMEs and Relinquishing Control, presented by Dawn Barron. Dawn Barron is the Product Marketing Manager for Gomo Instilled. She enjoys helping businesses and learning professionals alike find solutions to overcoming obstacles in the corporate learning space. As a product marketing manager for Gomo Learning and Instilled LXP, she has the opportunity to hear what challenges the profession is currently facing and works with the Gomo Instilled teams to position learning technologies to facilitate these issues. Dawn has spent the majority of her career in corporate learning as Vice President of Marketing for the Association for Talent Development and as the president of her own marketing consultancy focused on messaging education throughout businesses and associations. And with that, I will turn things over to Dawn. And Dawn, when you are ready to show your screen, please do so.
Thanks, Karen. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone who's with us today. Thanks for coming out for this. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about with our profession. The reason being is that a lot of us don't get into this profession as an aspiring young child to say that I'm going to be in the learning profession, or 20 years ago when it was called training, we didn't think that that's where we were going to go. But there's something about this profession that draws people to it because it allows us to help develop others. Way long ago, 20 years ago, some longer than that, when I started in this profession, I felt like it was more about helping people to develop skills so that they can translate learning opportunities to others. It's still that way now, except for the fact that this profession has expanded so much so that the idea of learning and talking with others and helping each other develop skills is part of our everyday life as employees of organizations or as consultants to other companies. And so the idea of expanding what we've been doing to include subject matter experts really forces a level of collaboration into our profession that I think can change cultures in organizations. It can change just the way we behave with others. Yet just yesterday, I was on a webinar that brought together people from diversity and inclusion teams in organizations with people who are in learning. And it was really interesting to see how they were talking to each other, because in that case, your D&I experts are your subject matter experts, and your learning professionals are looking to create learning opportunities to promote diversity and inclusion skills. And it was interesting to hear the two talk about what they thought their responsibilities were and how they could work together. And it's not an easy process. And so today we're going to go through some of the things that we need to be thinking about in order to expand our relationships with subject matter experts, appreciate those relationships, and really think about our overall goal, which is to create skill development opportunities that start to impact employees and start to advance our workforce. But with that, we're going to start with a foundation here. And what we're going to be talking about initially is how we all feel about delegating. So if you don't mind, you see the poll question up here, but Karen is going to initiate the poll and ask you to answer yes, no, if you find it's difficult to delegate or if you find that it's an easy thing to do. And once we get a baseline for who we're talking to, then we can advance the conversation. Okay, a few more seconds here. Okay, so this is not surprising. I think we all find that it is difficult to delegate. And here we're seeing about 70% of the group. This is a natural feeling. And so why? I looked at so many different studies of why people find themselves in a delegation dilemma. What is it that causes us or stops us from asking others for help? And there's so much that goes into that. I think we all have this idea that by sharing the work, we're going to advance, but when it actually comes down to sharing the work, we find it really hard. And here are some of the reasons why. We don't want to relinquish control. That's pretty natural to say, if I ask someone else to do it, I'm not sure of how they're going to do it. I'm not sure if they're going to do it the same way as me. And to be honest, we know they're not going to be doing it the same way as we are. So that's scary to us. And that leads to a level of trust. It's a conversation of trust in others' abilities. Additionally, when we are working with other people, we worry about whether or not they're going to do it better or if they're going to see a better outcome. And that may be an issue for us when it comes to job security. And in that vein, getting credit. And then the last one, which I think is a big part, we don't ask other people for help because we don't have the time to explain to them what it is that we want done. That's a big part of it. But what I think we've all been through is when we actually get to the point of delegation and we are able to unload an activity or a task to someone else, we do find that in the long run, it was a more efficient move. But right now, when we think about delegation and the fact that we don't want to do it, and for the reasons we don't want to do it, it makes us, it's kind of an ugly feeling. Is this who we want to be? Do we want to be fearful? Do we want to be untrusting? Do we want to worry about our jobs? We don't want to be like that. So how can we change the situation so that we can work with subject matter experts and feel better about the end result and about those relationships? And so what I'd ask you to think about is, this is not just a relationship that occurs in the learning profession. Every single day, we run into people who do things differently, better, worse than we do. And it's our responsibility, especially as learning professionals, especially as people who are committed to education, to gain a level of appreciation for what others have to offer, even when that makes you feel uncomfortable. It's worth that discussion to find out what it is that other person can bring to the table, because there's only so much we're capable of, and there's only so much that we can bring to the table. So it's always in our best interest to take that moment to find out what others have to offer and find an angle of appreciation there so that we can see how collectively we can make an impact on some of the work that we're doing. So every day at work, we are working with other people who manage different responsibilities within the learning function. We also deal with business stakeholders who are the recipients of the work that we do. And there are so many of these people that we see every day. Even when you're in a small learning function, you're still dealing with the people who receive the learning programs that you are responsible for creating for them. And so we are forced to really think about the different types of relationships that we go through every day. But what's funny is that even though we see so many people, we work with so many people on a day-to-day basis, there isn't really a clear model for how we want to see those relationships expand and how we can make them more productive. What there are models for is what you see in front of you here. There's a lot of technology out there in the learning space right now. There are a lot of different modalities for learning right now. And there are many models for how they may all fit together. And this is great that we have these types of maps so that we can see how technology connects and how different levels of training or the depth of training or the expansion of training, how it all fits together. But what we don't see a lot of is the relationship links between the people who are responsible for supporting these ecosystems and for supporting outcomes in learning. So today, that's what we're going to focus on, and how we can potentially make those relationships stronger so that we can be more effective and more efficient at our jobs. With that, we have 2 poll questions, and this first one is just going to kind of see how we all feel about using subject matter experts in the learning function. So think of this question as on a weekly basis, how often are you reaching out to subject matter experts? Do you feel good about that? Is it your go-to way of creating learning these days, or do you kind of stay away from those types of relationships? Okay, this is looking good. And again, not surprising. So we're all in favor of using subject matter experts, just like we're all in favor of delegating, but we don't do it. So now our next question is going to be, if you are in favor of using subject matter experts, but the likelihood of 90% of us actually involving them on a daily basis or on a project basis, there must be some concerns there that you have for leveraging them. And so here we have a multiple choice poll of what concerns you may have about leveraging subject matter experts more often. Okay, great. And Karen, if you don't mind, if you can keep that poll up there, because I would ask our group now. Karen mentioned earlier that we have the chat functionality in on your screen. This is a really interesting slide because much of it has to do with the fact that we as learning professionals should be able to teach subject matter experts how to do things so that it lives up to a level of consistency that we're looking for, or it lives up to a level of experience level that we're after. But we see here that 44% of you are fearful of inconsistency and design and delivery. Now, I would like to talk about that, and if you can engage in the conversation, I think that would be best, because I feel like this is varied across the board. So right now we have so many options in front of us for how we can engage subject matter experts. We also have so many different ways of delivering training. So let's get into some specifics here. I'm not going to start another poll here, but if you can answer in the chat, are there many of you out there who are using video in order to capture subject matter expertise? If you can just weigh in just with a chat saying yes, no, maybe. And so the point of that question is, video is a great method for people to use, for learning professionals to use subject matter expertise. But the idea of turning on a video camera and letting someone share their context is a little frightening, because we don't know what's going to happen. So we often get the question of whether or not there are ways that we as learning professionals can train subject matter experts to hit on certain highlights, to make sure that they are adhering to certain criteria, and in general to make them feel more comfortable when we put them on a learning stage. There are also different collaboration tools that we can use with subject matter experts that help to raise the bar, so that we do feel like our subject matter experts have a baseline understanding of the expectation that we're looking for. So just keep that in mind as we move forward with the content here. Inconsistency in design and delivery can be helped with training. And so there may be a give and take here, as we were talking about in the beginning. That's where learning professionals that's where learning professionals are super strong. We can help people understand these types of ways of design and delivery. So we need to be the ones to stand up there and say, subject matter expert, we're going to teach you the criteria. We're going to teach you the tips and tools in order to get to this certain level. You then bring the experience and you bring the stories to this content. Thanks, Karen. Okay, so as we've come to this understanding amongst the group here that we want to delegate more, we want to use subject matter experts more, but we do still have this fear, variety of things, but the main one seems to be inconsistency. And so what we have to look at when we are looking to design training, if we're looking to create learning experiences that leverage the expertise and stories of others in our organizations or close to our organization, we have to understand what our purpose is and what their purpose is. And so the discussion of purpose is a really big one right now. If we understand our role in a project, if we understand our role in the organization, if we understand why we're doing what we're doing, we tend to get there faster and with a better outcome. So when you're considering using subject matter experts, you really need to be cognizant about the answer to that question. Ask yourself, what am I going into here? And then ask your subject matter expert, what is it that you do best? Why are you doing what you're doing? If those mindsets are brought to the forefront, then both of you have something that you can say, I'm doing it for this reason, you're doing it for that reason, and together this is how we're going to move forward. Next, you have your innovation mindset. We all know that it's easiest to fall back to what we've always done. And so we are asking ourselves to stretch here when we're using people who aren't learning professionals, who we're not so sure about how they present in front of a group. We may not know every single word that's going to come out of their mouths, but we want to change things and we want to provide better experiences. And by using subject matter experts, we're gaining so many more experiences than we can offer if we were just designing something on our own or within our own learning team. So we have to think about what can you as the learning professional do better? And what can the subject matter expert do to make the overall a better product? How can you together be innovative? And keeping an open mind or an innovative mindset is not always easy. Like we said, it's easier to go back to what we've always done than to change what we're doing. And then finally, level of influence. Your mind, when you set out to do something, you need to understand what sphere of impact you can have. You as a learning professional, you may be able to affect so many people in the organization with the learning that you put out. But maybe your subject matter expert, who's someone who is influential in the organization, can help you to expand that experience further than you can if you did it on your own. As an example, if you're delivering sales training and you've been asked by the sales function to create a sales training on overcoming objectives, you can do that. I have no doubt that learning professionals can create that type of content. There are a lot of resources out there in order to pull something together that looks really great. And I guarantee you, if you put it on your LMS, you're going to get salespeople to pay attention to that course because it's something that they need to do. It's been defined as a skill that's needed. If you, though, use people within your sales team as subject matter experts to support that content, to tell about what they've done, to tell about the experiences and the stories and the successes and failures that they've gone through when they've tried to overcome objectives, the sphere of impact is much larger because you have others within the organization that actually want to hear about what the person next to them has done, or what their vice president has done, or what people close to their sphere are doing so that they can learn from those specific stories. So just creating a course with content and skills and here's how to, it's necessary, but it will only get you so much impact. Bringing that subject matter expert in increases the network of people who are interested. Okay. All right, here's an example. You have two people who are within the organization. One is your learning professional and another who is a leader within the organization. We're seeing that the learning professional has been asked to create leadership training. And so that's what they're looking to do. And they're specifically looking to provide leadership training to recently hired managers. And getting excited about it. It's a new project. It's something that they feel like is needed. And they just come back from an expo and they find all these great things that they want to incorporate in this leadership project. And they know that they need to get approval by current stakeholders to see who it is, to make sure that this is the type of leadership training that needs to be delivered and that this is the best way to reach people. Well, then you have on the other side of the organization, maybe not in the same office, maybe in an entirely different country, but they're there. And it's a subject matter expert who is currently a leader in the company who has written a number of different publications, books, whatever it may be, on the idea of leadership and the value of leadership. So both of you have a purpose that, while slightly different, is something that could definitely be unified in order to create a benefit for the organization. Further, you have, while you as the learning professional have been to learning conferences and you understand the new technologies that are out there to deliver and design training, you have your COO who has just come back from a leadership conference. And that person is hearing other stories from leaders from all different countries about all different companies about what it is that they're doing. And it makes her think that there are still things that can be done to improve the leadership culture at your company. Great stories there. And then finally, the influence that the COO would have if she becomes your subject matter expert is huge, because she is a leader within the organization and she has the capability to provide a story that many people want to listen to. So it may take some time to find these people within your organization, but they're there. And if you do go into these relationships with a purpose, innovation, and influence mindset, then you start to match up these mindsets with other people who are in your organization, and you can turn out a product that's better than you can ever do if you did it on your own. Okay, so based on the context set so far, we have another poll here that asks you what you think your subject matter experts can do to be most effective to help you in your job. Okay, just a few more seconds here. Okay, so really across the board, you feel that SMEs can help for you to deliver different types of training experiences that you're currently delivering, possibly on your own. I love that one of the larger ones here is as mentors. That's an excellent way of using subject matter experts, because it's what they do on a day-to-day basis, and they likely have teams of people who are looking to follow them. So they provide a great example for that. I do want to go back to recording short videos. We have a number of you in response to my question earlier about using subject matter experts for short videos. It sounds like it's another one of those situations where you feel like it's a perfect match for subject matter experts, but there's a fear of letting them do that. And that they, it's more of how do we control the environment so that they feel that, so that you can leverage the experiences that they have. That's a huge, it's going to be a recurring theme with working with subject matter experts. And it's so much even bigger than that. The way that we set up our relationships with other people, it takes a large amount of tolerance. And that is not something that you come by easily. As mentioned yesterday, we were in this great discussion with the D&I people, and it's so much deeper than what we learn on a day-to-day basis with work, and how we were brought up and what we think about others and their capabilities. And to change that is, it's a real stretch. And in most cases, what I'm seeing in the comments is it leans on a lack of trust when using subject matter experts. It leans a little bit on the shared responsibility of how we work together. You expect the subject matter expert to do something at a particular time, it doesn't happen, and then your plan is thrown off. So there's a lot there that we have to create and look to make structures for, so that the experiences of both of you, the skills that you both bring, are brought into a structure that helps us to leverage what we all have to offer. And with that, we're going to go into what I call enablers. So we know what we want. We know what we should be doing, or the culture and the conversations that we should be creating in order to bring our subject matter experts in. But while we may want something, the idea of getting to what we want, it's tough, and we need support in order to be able to do that. You all probably are very privy to the fact that over the past couple of years, more and more research keeps coming out about the gap in soft skill development. We hear about this in so many different ways. You can look at it from a generational perspective. You can also just look at it as we work with so much automation that we don't need to be talking to people as much anymore. We're so connected via phones and devices that we don't know how to actually talk and be empathetic to others. And it's clearly a problem, but the good news is we've recognized that there's a problem. And it shows up in this relationship between learning professionals and subject matter experts. We really have to understand what it is that they're looking to provide and how they can help us, and how then we can communicate or facilitate that relationship through strong communication skills so that we can leverage, what we know and the relationship that's there. And if you don't mind chiming in here, in your organizations, how often are you being required to develop communication skills so that you can create a better environment for conversations like this? Is that something that's being put on the learning team right now? Are you seeing that happen more often than not? Yeah, it looks like it's definitely something that we find is differentiating aspiring leaders from others within the organization, because communication skills are imperative in order to lead the future organization. And they're so important in this relationship too. Sometimes we have to go back to really understanding what it is and how it is that we can communicate with people. And in this case, in order to keep those relationships going, it may be worth a refresher, just to think about how it is you talk to other people, how it is, or recall the relationship or the conversation that you had with a subject matter expert, and actually think about how you could have done it differently the next time. So communication skills are imperative to providing a good relationship between you and subject matter experts. But next is technology. So as mentioned, and as we know, we live in a world where the people that we want to work with aren't next door anymore. In fact, I work with a very large company, and just recently we had an announcement made that a new hire was brought onto the organization, and his office was right next to the gentleman who was sending a note out. And I was like, that's just strange to me lately. Like, very often these days we bring on new employees and they live in a different country, or they're on the other side of the country. We're in New York, they're in California. And this case was kind of unique. This person is now sitting in the office next to me. So we have to find ways in order to assist the flow of information between our subject matter experts and the learning team. And there are a variety of ways that we can do that. We have so many communication technologies these days, whether it's Slack or Hangouts or anything like that you can use from a chat perspective to break down the barrier of time and distance. So I suggest that when you are working with subject matter experts, you identify your chat tool. How are you going to be talking to this person? In the best case, yeah, you can talk to them and interview them in person. That would be great, but the likelihood of that is not the case. So determine early on what it is that you want, how it is that you want to talk to this person so that you can be comfortable in transferring flow of information between the two. And sometimes it's worth picking up the phone and talking to somebody about these things, because you can gauge the level of energy and enthusiasm that they have for a particular topic. Video is also great for that. So use these technologies so that you can get to know who it is that you're working with. I bet we've all been in that situation where you've had a relationship with somebody who works remotely, and you communicate with them over email, and you start to gain a perception of what this person is like. Oh, they're kind of short on email. They never say thanks. They don't say hello. Oh, it's just like all these things that you think about in your head because we're judging how they reply to an email. And that changes in a heartbeat when you turn on your webcam, when you pick up the phone. While it may confirm that that person is rather short in the way they communicate, it also, in most cases, changes, because you get to learn about that person. You see that person, you hear that person. If they're on the phone with you, or if they're on a video with you, you may find that they're willing to tell a personal story, which gives you greater context as to who they are. Technology is so important in creating those relationships, but not just if you're going to leave it at email. Let's take that one step further and really get to know the people that we're working with as subject matter experts by allowing ourselves to share. And in this case, you know, technology lets us do that sharing. The technology allows us to reach people when we may not be able to reach them in the same time zone or in the same location. Leverage that in order to build out the relationship with your subject matter expert. Okay, and then next we have the process and strategy. And doing that is what's going to get to the crux of what many of you were saying in your comments earlier, that you don't feel like you have the time in order to make this relationship work. And we all know with relationships, you have to put the time in order to make that possible. So sharing timelines, sharing tasks and responsibilities, coming up with milestones for when you're going to get to this work and when you're going to complete work, when you're going to share progress with each other. All of that is so imperative in order to advance the way that you are working with your subject matter expert. We have a number of questions here, so I'm just going to stop for one quick second. Great. Yeah. So a number of you are giving your suggestions as to how you have worked with subject matter experts. And I think what's most apparent here is that by assuming that they understand what timeline you're on is not going to get you anywhere. And by guiding them through skills that require them to design or deliver is going to be time consuming on your part. We have a suggestion here that someone says that they schedule meetings with direct questions to pull that knowledge so that they can understand the baseline level of knowledge of the subject matter experts and can build from there. That's really important. And so much of what we've been talking about today is about coming up with that foundation, the shared foundation. This is my purpose, this is your purpose. So how are we working together? And I'll tell you this, from the very beginning, before you even get to the enablers, if you find that your purposes don't align, you might want to find a different subject matter expert. There are a lot of people within your organization or surrounding your organization that can provide you with great experience and great contacts for the skills that you're trying to develop. If you find that the person that you're speaking with is not a good fit, that's okay too. That's really part of this identification process, to say, this is the person I want to work with, and I want to work with them because they have the knowledge, experience, and they share a similar work ethic and purpose with me. Okay, we have some more here. Yeah, it's really interesting, and but again, not surprising. The level of fear and concern that we have for letting go something that we feel like we can manage ourselves. We do this all the time, and you know, I just want to say before I continue, I very much so appreciate how vulnerable many of you are being with the chats, because it's hard to say that we fear something. It's hard to say that we don't trust others. Like, all of those things are real though, and I think once we can say them, then we can find ways to overcome them. And it doesn't have to be overnight. It's something that we have to look at and say, why is it that I don't trust this person? Is this person thinking different than me? Is this person doing things in a different way than me that I can learn to become comfortable with, or that I can't? Or maybe there are strategies and technologies like we're talking about right now that can help you to overcome that distrust or that fear. And it's worth taking that risk to see, but it also is time consuming for you to be able to do that. So that's where the process and strategy come into play. Okay, we have a few others here as well. Right, okay, so this one is a great question. So in my example earlier about learning professional finding COO, and wow, that's a perfect match. You might be saying to me, sure, Dawn, it is a perfect match, but our COO is really busy and they're never going to comply with the deadlines that we have here. And that is very, very possible. I think in those cases, that's where we have the power to say, this is what my deadline is. This is what my expectation is. And I need to know or get a commitment that this is possible for you. And if it's not, that's okay. We really have to think about what the outcome is. If your outcome is to deliver something by November 1st, then you have to find someone who's willing to deliver it by November 1st. If your outcome is to put out the best leadership training your company has ever put out, and the only way you think that that's possible is by having all of the voice of the C-suite, well, then maybe you're willing to not have it out on November 1st, but you are going to deliver it at some point in Q1 2020, and it's going to be the best thing the company has seen. So there's some sacrifices that you have to make too in terms of working with your subject matter experts. Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about the best times to use subject matter experts. And this is where you're sort of finding the person who's your match here. So you are asked as a learning professional to solve a problem that's facing the organization, whether it's leadership, sales, culture. It's your responsibility to take the next step. The next step is we want to put a training program out there. But think about a big responsibility on you before you ever think about the subject matter expert is what is the level of exposure that I need to put our employee base in front of in order to help to solve this problem? Is it only learning that's going to solve this problem? Are there other aspects that need to be looked at before we can say, we're ready, here we go? Leadership, sales, culture, all of those things are major issues that face an organization. And many of them, I'm actually going to take sales aside for right now and focus on culture and leadership. Culture and leadership are behavioral changes, how we treat other people. And you are never going to get away with putting out one e-learning module and it's going to fix the problem. It's just not that way. We're talking about doing learning that's going to change the way people appreciate and tolerate each other. And then go one step further, how they can then take a relationship and start to build things for the organization to stand on and be more productive. There's a lot that goes into that. Now going back to sales. Sales has been broken down for us by a number of sales leadership people who say these are the elements of a good sales process. Your organization likely has its own sales process, and that's where a subject matter expert is so imperative. You as a learning professional can identify the steps that go into a strong sales cycle and all of the steps that go along with that. But if your organization has uniquely designed the sales process and they have certain things that they know have worked, then your gold is within the sales team itself. And so being a partner to that sales team, possibly even sitting in on a sales call, really getting into the nitty-gritty of the process will help you to understand what it is your own organization is doing, how people are working on a day-to-day basis. Then and only then can you start working with subject matter experts to create learning programs that can fit into their workflow. So they really understand why they're doing it, they understand who's telling them how to do it, and it's fitting into what they're doing. It's super important, and it's only the subject matter experts, your sales team, that will be able to give you that information. So that's a very good example of using subject matter experts. Again, we're always faced with the time. Salespeople are always strapped for time. They always want to be in front of the customer, be in front of the next prospect. But if your work with the subject matter experts can help to find those windows within their day-to-day that you can insert training into their workflow, then you start to really facilitate the learning that they need. Finally, we have the example here of technical training. Many of you are likely in organizations where you are working with people who are, in quotes, in the field. They're actually working with the technology that your team sells. They are in front of a customer. Say, in this case, I used technical training, but it can apply to frontline managers as well. You have a hotel company, and so you have so many people who are frontlined to your guests. There are so many experiences that are happening every second inside of that company, and that information that they are gathering and the experiences that they are gathering are imperative to providing better training for the rest of the group. And so being able to use technology to capture that information, being able to talk to the people who are in front of your customer is the best way to gather examples of ways that people have made it work and the ways people have found failure. And then how to overcome that failure. What skills, what things could I have done differently in order to have a better outcome? And as we see what other people are doing and we understand the stories behind their successes and failures, that's how we can grow as a workforce. So it's a really great way of using subject matter experts in order to highlight the skills that we know that our organization needs to develop. Okay, so you put a lot of work into this relationship, and we know that the time commitment between you and the subject matter expert is a big deal. But once you achieve that relationship, things will start to change for your learning team. The idea that you'll have a growing network of experts within your business, outside of your business, people who are using products, people who are changing culture, those are the people who you want to become your go-to experts for when you have to design your next training module. We all can appreciate our networks. We tend to use them when we need something. But the last thing you want to do is reach out to somebody who you haven't spoken to in 15 years and say, hey, now it's now time that I need you. We need to keep these relationships going. And so it's something that I would suggest that in order to move those relationships forward with your subject matter experts, upon project completion, you want to share how people are using the work that you've done together. You want to give updates so that the relationship stays fresh for the next time when you may need to reach out to that subject matter expert for a new topic. So make sure, again, it's time consuming, but that's what good relationships require. Make sure you stay in touch with the experts who are helping you build out your learning. And the more that network grows, the more comfortable you'll be the next time you need to engage in a project that requires that level of expertise. And then the next thing, this goes back to the influence mindset. If you're using people to help you create learning experiences that are outside of the learning culture, you have your chances of expanding the power of learning grow exponentially. In any case, if you're able to tell someone who is outside of your immediate sphere about something that you're doing, the chance of them telling other people about it, promoting it is great. If they're involved with that project, if they have a role in that project, it's better. And so if you can start working with the people in your organizations in order to create learning programs, they're more likely to promote them. This gets to a really sticky subject that I definitely want to address while we still have some time. We are constantly hearing about user-generated content. And user-generated content, I would say, it falls into this category of subject matter experts. So how can we use subject matter experts in order to generate content? They're potentially a user of some of the things that we do. How do they talk about it? But what gets sticky is when we open up user to employee, so employer-generated content. In my previous slide, when I was talking about use cases, I mentioned the fact that if we have a culture problem, we may invite the employee in as the subject matter expert to highlight some of the issues that our company is facing. It definitely is risky, and not all companies can do it. But I highly suggest that you do find the employee voice or find a place for the employee voice. It's not something that needs to be completely open so that every employee in your organization has a forum. But believe it or not, I've worked with video companies for over the past 15 years, and we very, very rarely come into a situation where an employee uses that technology in order to create something negative on behalf of the organization. The reason being is that you have to take pride in what you do when you turn on the camera. You are not going to go out there to create a legacy of something that gets known as being terrible, at least not the majority of people who we work with. They take pride in what they're doing in front of the camera. If they know that their role is to create an experience that others can learn from, then they're going to want to do the best that they can. One, when people are using video, a number of stats have been put out there about how many times someone records something before they're willing to post it to their organization or before they're willing to share it. And when it's done inside of the workplace or for work-related things, we're seeing an average of 8 times that someone records something before they're willing to share it with their manager or with a coworker. That takes a lot of commitment for people to do that. And it shows that they want it to be the best that it can be. So it is a large stretch for organizations to consider their employees as subject matter experts. But when we really think about it, so many of our employees are living it. They're living the day-to-day. And if we can capture that information from them so that we can present it to others, we're not only creating an educational opportunity, but we're also showing that we're collaborative and that we're listening. And all of those things go back to creating that soft skill, to closing that soft skill gap. How can we, as learning people, work with others in order to show what we're trying to help grow? We are trying to make people more collaborative. We're trying to make people think more creatively, solve problems together, share more, listen more. We actually have that opportunity here when we're working with our subject matter experts. So we firsthand can experience this. We open it up to employees, and now we're really creating change within the organization and pushing cultures forward. And then lastly, this is more of an ROI on using subject matter experts, but there are a lot of fees tend to be associated with using third-party content or third-party subject matter experts in order to create learning experiences. And if we can leverage what's within, we will definitely save from a financial perspective. However, a few months back, I did another webinar and we asked people what percentage of people would prefer to use internal subject matter expert content or third-party content. And internal subject matter expertise came out 80% to 20%. And we all know why. It's because why would we hire a third-party provider to tell us about a skill that we're actually doing uniquely inside of our own organization? Now, I know that there are some skills that will look the same if you're in company A or if you're in company Z, but in order to really hone in on what it is your company is doing and the culture and the values and the principles that it lives by, it's worth looking at your internal subject matter experts in order to provide that type of content. So definitely keep that in mind. While it's a cost saver, it's also going to create a stronger impact by using the uniqueness of your company and the employees that actually practice that on a day-to-day basis. And then the last few bonuses here, by you working with your subject matter experts, you learn something. I know being in learning, it would really be great for us all to say we have time to learn, but we don't either. We don't have endless time where we can learn something new every day. But if you're talking to new people every day and you're asking them questions, you do learn that way. And so by reaching out to more subject matter experts, by giving yourself some time to just find out what the person next to you at work is doing or the new person who's just been onboarded into your team, that provides you value. You learn something from them and they're a potential resource to you going forward. So think about it in that way as well. And then lastly, of course, when we started this presentation, we talked about all of those things that prevent us from delegating, and those things don't feel so great. You don't want to be fearful and you don't want to have a lack of trust. So by being able to practice your relationship with your subject matter experts, it allows you to have a better feel for how you work with people in your organization and the relationships that you hold. Okay, so we are coming up toward the end of the hour here, but before we do, I wanted to provide you with a few resources that could be useful for you to think about how you're going to be working with subject matter experts. From a technology perspective, there are a number of different technologies out there. I work closely with the 3 that I have listed here. And I just wanted to describe not the specifics of any of these, but the why. So these days we've talked about video, we've talked about different ways that technology chats can help to facilitate a conversation. But what I'm talking about here is actually allowing your subject matter experts to get into the learning design. There are collaborative learning tools out there. I'm familiar with GOMO. It allows for people to, subject matter experts included, to get into the learning design as a practitioner, as an administrator. They can do all of the design, but the instructional designers are the ones who review all of their work, approve all of their work. They can send along tips to say what you need to do better, what you can improve on. Those types of learning experiences, literally within the design of learning, are really invaluable to your subject matter experts, because it only may take once or twice to go through an authoring, to author a learning module, to have the subject matter expert realize and appreciate what it is you do on a day-to-day basis. And what you do is not easy. If you're involved in e-learning authoring, you have tons to think about. You have so many technologies to learn, and to the ones that help, at least to make that a bit easier. And when you can share a glimpse of your world with a subject matter expert, then they gain an appreciation for the type of work that you're doing, just like you're gaining from conversations with them. We also are living in a world right now where LXPs are all the rage. And why is that? We know that they're different than LMSs, and the reason being is that because they're more flexible and they allow you to create experiences. They open up the types of people who can use them are more permission based. So you can have your subject matter experts create content right there in the learning experience platform. You can have your users comment, share, all of those social aspects that we've been talking about and how that helps to build relationships. Those are all going to come into play in a learning experience platform. So there are definitely technologies out there that can make that happen. And so my suggestion when you're thinking about technologies, if you are looking to work with subject matter experts more often, and I highly suggest you should, because that's going to expand the great work that you do, then consider the technologies that you're choosing in order to make that more possible, and to invite your subject matter experts into the process itself. And then we also have a number of different ebooks and articles that are available for you that will give you tips for working through this, many of them which we mentioned today, and courses that you can take not only for you to take to learn how to work with subject matter experts, but courses that your subject matter experts can take in order to learn how to create learning. They don't need to know the ins and outs of what you do, but they can certainly have a baseline knowledge of how to so that they gain an appreciation for design and delivery that could really be invaluable for your relationships going forward. So that's something to consider as well. Okay, I am about done with all of what I wanted to present to you today, and I very much so hope that this was informative for you. I know that Karen is going to have this recorded, and if there's anything else that comes in terms of questions, I am happy to talk. Oh, yeah, well, a lot of the questions are about whether or not you can have a copy of the presentation, and yes, all of this will be available for you. And some really great comments here. Again, I wanted to just thank you for talking through your comments and feedback about the idea of having relationships with subject matter experts, because it is a rather personal topic, and we all, you know, we can all improve on the soft skills that we have, especially at work and especially in leveraging people that aren't within our zone. But the impact of it in the long run is worth your time and effort. So I applaud you for talking about these types of things and for addressing how you're currently feeling, and I wish you the best of luck as you expand our great profession and bring others in so that you can affect more people at work and in the communities that we live in.
Thank you, Dawn, for that. That was a great presentation. I know there were a lot of people who were interested, and I want to thank our audience as well for being a little vulnerable and helping us understand how everybody works with their SMEs and how we can learn how to really relinquish control and have them be a really valuable part of our team, as we all know they are. With that, I would like to thank everybody and thank Dawn for that presentation, and thank GoToWebinar, which is provided by LogMeIn. And we'll just stay on the line here for a couple of minutes to see if you have any additional questions for Dawn. Someone did say there's a thing called an LXP. Would you like to speak to that a little bit, Dawn?
Oh, sure thing. LXPs are learning experience platforms. And I can absolutely provide you with more context as to the compare and contrast with a learning management system versus a learning experience platform. But in general, the learning experience platform is more flexible. It allows for all of your users within the workplace to get more engaged in the creation side of content. It also allows for better analytics so that you can see how people are using your content from a social perspective. All of the typical analytics and reporting for LMSs are typically brought into your LXP, but you have additional social metrics that you can see how people are engaging with that content. Now, LXPs vary across the board. Since we started to see LXPs pop up in the marketplace, they typically hit a number of criteria. Josh Burson has put out a list of criteria that he believes LXPs should adhere to, and then has categorized the number of them that are in the marketplace. But some of them will go as far as integrating third-party content. That's pretty typical, integrating third-party content so that you have a library of experiences that your employees can draw from. But not all are based on that. The instilled LXP is based primarily on video and allowing for the creation of video by your users and by your subject matter experts, and then of course your learners. It incorporates both video and e-learning modules, but then can also draw in PowerPoints and PDFs and other document-based information so that you can gather like content and create the experience. So it's sort of like, it's like a playlist, but it's the idea is you have a number of different modules of content and different modalities of content that you can all pull together to create that learning experience for someone who is interested in leadership development in a particular organization. They can search on that, they can pull like content together, they can also see other people who have been pulling together that content. So I'd say the greatest difference between a learning management system and a learning experience platform is that you're connecting other aspects of learning into the platform. The people, the subject matter expertise, and all of the different modalities of learning and analytics versus LMSs that tend to push out.
That was a great response, and I think we have a few people here who are going to go find out more about LXPs, and Chris says it was a wonderful answer, so that's great. I may have missed it, Dawn, but do you have any tips or tricks to get with the SMEs who are like CEOs or high-level executives?
Sure. I would say in that case, it's kind of like why I use that example about using, or the example of having a COO involved. Making sure that leadership goals from a culture perspective that are talked about in an organization are actually executed should be a big deal for the company. Most of the times I get to talk to companies, I hear like, oh yes, our leadership wants this to happen, but by the time it gets down to middle management and below, it's not happening. And I think that's an angle that you can use in order to get C-level engagement. Talk to them about what it is that is of interest to them, that they are also promoting throughout the organization, and then say, I can be your partner in executing on that, and here's how. That's a really great way of helping them walk the talk. We hear so much of what the C-level wants, but is it really reaching everyone in the organization? You have the power to make that happen, especially if you can engage in a relationship with them.
Great answer. Thank you so much. And with that, I'm going to thank Dawn Barron for sharing her time with us and thanking all of you for sharing your time with us. And once again, I just want to say thank you to GoToWebinar, which is by LogMeIn, who provided this platform. You will be receiving a follow-up email from PeopleFluent, and we are posting this recording, and the PDF of the deck will be in our sponsored library. If you have any further questions, please reach out to Dawn. I'm sure she'd be happy to answer them for you. And with that, I'm going to close our session. Thanks so much, everyone.
Well, thanks, Karen, and thanks everyone who's joined.